We've got a coaches poll, which means we're almost to college football season.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers tuning in. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're here to cover all things Oklahoma Sooners for you every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. He's Jay Smith, I'm John Williams. We got the USA Today US LBM Coaches Poll released for the preseason on Monday, which means college football is really here. I think it's here. I mean, we got fall camps going on. We're less than a month away from the 2024 season kicking off with week 1. We're just like 2 to 3 weeks away from week 0, which is crazy to think. And Jay, the Oklahoma Sooners come in at number 16 in the US LBM Coaches Poll.
Yeah, I feel like that's a very good spot for the Sooners, right? Last season, we came in at like 18, 19, maybe 20-ish, right? Same thing in the first year. So I actually like being in that range. That gives us something to work towards, and it doesn't inflate our heads a little too much, right? I know Venables mentioned this in his presser. He actually mentioned his SEC Media Days. He was talking about how he felt like the team just got a little too full right after that Texas win, being undefeated, riding high. Then the UCF game happened, and then we started seeing injuries and attrition kicked our butt. This is going to give them something to strive for, just to prove everybody ahead of them that they're going to have to play, which is a lot and very noteworthy, that they can compete.
Yeah, 16 is not a bad spot to be. It's interesting that, that puts them at 8th among SEC teams, just like where they were in the SEC preseason media poll. So the coaches, the media kind of both agree that Oklahoma is the quote-unquote 8th best team in the SEC going into the season. But you look at the teams that are in front of them, you've got 6 teams that Oklahoma will play on their 2024 schedule ranked ahead of them. And Texas at number 4, Alabama at number 5, Ole Miss at number 6. I mean, this is a lot of strength of schedule possibilities for you. So if you are able to be successful this season, I mean, the schedule is going to really help you and give you a boost if you're able to get to that 9-10 win range.
Oh yeah. This schedule is built for Oklahoma to make a playoff if 9 wins happens, right? 9 wins gets you in because of just how tough the schedule is. And as you mentioned, I mean, you go from 4, 5, and 6 are on Oklahoma's schedule, then 11 and 12 and 15 are on Oklahoma's schedule. Out of all of them, as you said, Georgia's the only one that we don't play. But personally, I don't like preseason polls very much. I don't even like polls being created when it comes to like ranking teams until like week 4, because that's when you start understanding the true identity of teams. And so for us, keeping it, I'm going to keep it a buck here. I just hope the teams ahead of us actually do their jobs and stay ranked before we play them. That way, when we do beat them, we can feel good about it. But it's no fun if they all start spiraling right before they get to us. Then at that point, everybody's going to make all kinds of excuses, which of course are tools of incompetence used with monuments of nothingness. We're not going to get into that portion of it, but the good thing is that we do get to see 6, which can guarantee an opportunity to jump up in the polls.
Yeah, and at some point, I mean, I would say most of those teams will stay ranked throughout much of the season. Like Alabama, they're going to stay ranked all season long. Now, whether they're a top 5 team all year long, that remains to be seen. I think Texas will stay ranked. I don't necessarily think they're going to be one of the best 4 teams in the country, but they'll stay ranked. Same for Ole Miss. So I think even if they don't live up to those top 5, top 6 expectations, I do think that they will be ranked teams by the time Oklahoma goes to play them. A team like Tennessee, we'll see. They've got a bit of a non-conference challenge ahead of them before Oklahoma gets to them. The Auburn's probably not going to be ranked, although they could be ranked if things go well for them in the non-conference part of the season. LSU is going to be one of those that I think has a chance to fall out of the top 25 by the time Oklahoma faces them, especially if they get off to a rocky start. Our guy Spencer McLaughlin over at Locked On College Football did his USC schedule prediction for 2024 and actually has the Trojans beating LSU week 1 in Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. So we'll see. I mean, they've got a lot of retooling they got to do on the defensive side of the ball. They've got to figure that out. But if there's any of those 6 teams that I think isn't going to be ranked top 25 by the time Oklahoma faces them, LSU would be the one that probably stands out the most, just because I think of all those 6 teams ahead of Oklahoma, they're the one I have a little bit more question about. And a lot of it is the defense, Grant Nussmeier, and then obviously replacing 2 first-round wide receivers as well. So what else do you take away from this? I know you're not a big fan of the polls. It's fine. But what else are you taking away from this? Is there a team that you think is ranked a little bit too high, too low?
Yeah, I think the other thing that interests me too is, as we're talking about who we're going to face, you've got Michigan here, right? Sitting there dead smack at number 8. Now all of the investigation stuff is happenstance starting to come out right before the season start. To me, at this point, it is what it is. Jim Harbaugh did what he did. He ain't coming back to college. He's done with the college ranks. He got his national championship and he's bouncing. And unfortunately, you can't take that ring away from him. It's going to be in his pocket for the rest of his life. Same thing with those players. But because of all the stuff going on with there, I'm wondering how much is that going to cloud their preparation for that Texas game, which is going to be huge coming to the big house. Right now, Michigan is still a very physical team, so I don't anticipate them losing their physicality, but I'm wondering about their focus with everything going down. But that one game is going to be super pivotal. That makes sense. Notre Dame is always ranked super high to me, and I just never understand it. I just don't get why Notre Dame is always here for them to, let us down. Now, Marcus Freeman is I think he's doing a solid job, but if he finishes with 10 wins, cool, he ain't going to finish at number 7. So to me, if the anticipation is that Notre Dame is going to have 10 wins, we may as well keep them between 12 and 15 because that's where they're going to always end every single season.
Is going to be, I think, highly ranked on a regular basis just because they're Notre Dame. Now, they made some good additions in the transfer portal. Riley Leonard is a solid quarterback. I don't necessarily know that he's better than what they had last year. For them, I think it's just making sure they start off strong because they didn't really get off to a great start. And then they came on strong down the stretch and looked really good. But yeah, Notre Dame is always going to be one of those toss-ups because you never know what you're going to get with them, but they're always going to be kind of highly favored as far as coaching. The coaches poll and the AP poll are concerned. If I look at it, in the top 10, is there another team that maybe I'm concerned about, or I don't think? Florida State, maybe, they're a fringe top 10 team, kind of right there at number 10. I can see an argument for LSU or for Missouri being ahead of them. Maybe Utah might be a little bit high, but I think the coaches have this pretty right. I don't really have any big complaints here. It's nice to see Kansas getting a little bit of love in the preseason poll at number 24. I would probably flip-flop Oklahoma State and Kansas State, but again, that's just one spot. A lot of people are predicting it to be Utah or Kansas State winning the Big 12. I'm like, why are we not thinking Oklahoma State? Now, this is not Locked On Cowboys or Locked On Pokes or Locked On Big 12, but I just think we're sleeping on Oklahoma State going into this season with Alan Bowman, Ollie Gordon, Rashad Owens. That's a really good football team that I think is going to give the Big 12 fits. Any other final takeaways as we kind of wrap up our discussion of the coaches poll before we move on to our second segment where we talk running backs?
Yeah, that's a good point that you mentioned about Oklahoma State. They should, but the biggest thing that we know about Oklahoma State is that they always don't. Right? That's it's a tradition as old as the game itself. They get themselves all the way to the top, and the next thing you know, the victory gum is snatched away from them, and then boom, they're out of the BCS. They're out of a playoff opportunity. They always knock themselves out because no matter what, they will give it to you in the regular season, but then they fall on their face at the end. So I kind of understand Kansas State. Like I said, it isn't Locked On Big 12. It's fun to talk about it, but lastly, that Clemson at number 14, man. I wonder what they're going to look like because the last couple of years without Venables has a little bit shaky, even with the same defensive players. Kind of curious what that's going to look like moving forward.
I don't know if you caught this, but Dabo Swinney said he'd be the best transfer portal coach if he wasn't at Clemson. I thought that was fascinating.
What?
I think it's a real quote. I just caught a glimpse of it scrolling.
I'm going to search for that one.
But it definitely made me do a double take.
You had to chuckle on that one. It's like,
I really did. Texas A&M is the only other SEC team ranked. They come in at number 20. Oklahoma won't play in this year, but Aggies are an intriguing bunch over there with Mike Elko now. If Connor Weigman stays healthy, that could be a really fascinating team to follow this year. The Oklahoma Sooners running back position is looking really strong, looking really solid heading into 2024. What's the hierarchy look like? Who could be a big-time contributor? We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
Y'all know me. I love my sports. As we just talked about the coaches poll, I'm looking at Oklahoma's win total at over 7.5 still here on FanDuel. And I'm going to be honest, man, it's an intriguing one. It's one of those you may need to take advantage of because what's there to lose? Oklahoma has set themselves up to be successful. And so, I mean, like I said, as much as I love my sports, man, I don't want them to stop. Luckily, the Olympics are happening right now, so you have a little bit of something. But with everybody's focus on that and the playoffs have winded down, we're getting fewer games and they're not sporting like the way we want. But FanDuel is going to keep me in the sports going wherever I want. All I have to do is open up the app, dream up whatever bet I want, and boom, make the magic happen. And so this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That is right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long, as summer is starting to come up. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of the last parts of the summer because football is on the way. Get those bets in before football season happens. So FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
And thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On College Football Podcast. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussion on the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, new college football expanded playoffs, and more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, thank you for subscribing to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And Jay, the running back situation for the Oklahoma Sooners is looking really, really good. We've got a program, we've got a team that, I mean, you look at where it starts with Gavin Sawchuk and then maybe Jovantae Barnes, Taylor Tatum, Sam Franklin, who looked really good in spring. You got Xavier Robinson, and then you've got Andy Bass, who's injured, is going to be recovering. He'll medical redshirt this year. Where does running back start for you? What is the thought that you have when you start thinking about the running back position?
I think the biggest thing for me is not even, even ask the question about RB1 being solidified. It goes into RB2. Like, who's going to be the second guy on the field? Who's going to be potential third down back? Who's also going to be a potential power back, right? We have multiple options this year because it looks like we're healthy, right? Jovantae Barnes was out there today at the practice, and you saw him moving around. Some of the insiders and the local media got to go watch a little bit. They put out some videos, and you got to see him move. And I'm like, oh, wow, he's kind of looking like Jovantae Barnes of Florida State, the one we were hyping up before, his entire freshman season. We're like, okay, this is going to be the dude that's probably going to be next in line. And so, all right, hopefully he gets healthy. So for me, it's that second position. Who's going to be there next to Gavin Sawchuk? Because we know Sawchuk's got it lined up. He's healthy right now, knock on wood, and he gave us those 5 straight games of 100 yards plus. So even with quote-unquote makeshift offensive lines, he made the magic happen. And so we asked this question of, what is Sawchuk going to is Sawchuk going to continue to hold on to that position? Is it going to be Barnes at number 2? Is Kalib Hicks going to take it? Sam Franklin, he transferred in for a reason, right? Who's all going to play? And then, of course, you go to the freshmen, which we can talk about them in just a minute. But I ask you, who do you think is going to be that number 2 dude that we will see going into, I'd say, Tennessee? Because I think the first 3 games is when we'll figure it out.
Yeah, and I thank you for mentioning Kalib Hicks. That was an oversight on my part because that's a guy that's been running with the second team. And I think right now probably you're seeing Gavin Sawchuk, Jovantae Barnes getting a lot of the first team reps just because they're the veteran players. They've been around, Barnes just 2 years ago had over 500 yards rushing, emerged as the RB2 behind Eric Gray and looked really, really good. Again, he had 3 100-yard games. I want to say he had 5 games with more than 50 yards, had a bunch of games with more than 10 carries. I think it was 4 games with more than 10 carries on the season in 2022. So a really, really productive runner. It's just that 2023 year, I mean, he just really got hindered by the injury bug. So I think, it's Gavin Sawchuk. I'm going to say it's Jovantae Barnes. And then I think you're looking at Kalib Hicks and Taylor Tatum as the next guys up for Oklahoma. Brent Venables spoke highly of Taylor Tatum, and they said he's going to be a guy that helps us, and they got to figure out ways to get him on the field. I thought this quote on Taylor Tatum was really, really interesting from Jackson Arnold when he met with the media on Tuesday. Jackson says, I thought he's been really good, and I think Taylor adds a unique passing element to our game. Whether you line him up in empty or do whatever, put him in the passing game, he's very versatile. He's definitely going to be a good option for us this year, sort of along those lines. So I think Taylor Tatum's going to have a role, even though he just arrived in the summer. Everybody's been very complimentary of what the work has been looking like with Taylor Tatum. Obviously, He was the number 1 running back in the 2024 cycle for a reason. He's real good. So I think you'll see him a lot.
Yeah, and mentioning that coming out the backfield, I know that in some Seth Littrell offensive sets, he's thrown out there 2 running backs, right? So how intriguing would it be to have a Taylor Tatum in the backfield next to a Gavin Sawchuk or Jovantae Barnes, and then you go ahead and motion him out there to be the wide receiver, and that linebacker's following him. He don't know what to do because Tatum's a 4'4", 40 guy, right? So he's fast. So he's going to get out there, be able to outrun the linebacker as they cross everybody around him, and then boom, could potentially be gone for the touchdown. And so leveraging that versatility of the young guy, it's going to be awesome because he can't catch, right? I remember us watching him in high school. In one game, he threw a touchdown, caught a touchdown, and he ran for a touchdown. Yeah. It's like, dude, like what are we doing here, right? Like, that's the best part about getting the number 1 running back in the country that's seen as a big time athlete, is that he's doing so many versatile things. And so I like the fact that we're looking at leveraging him like that. That's gonna really be impactful for the different sets that Seth Littrell's gonna be able to show, because ain't nobody seen Seth Littrell's offenses in a bit. So it's gonna be difficult for some of these SEC schools to figure out what we're gonna do.
Well, I think it's beneficial because you've got a guy like Sawchuk who's going to get your 15 carries a game, and DeMarco Murray's going to want to play multiple guys. I mean, Murray knows as much as anybody, any running back coach in the country, what it looks like when you get overused. That the Dallas Cowboys did it to him back in the 2014 season. He was never the same again. They gave him 390 something carries. I mean, he had a big year, was offensive player of the year that year, but that workload really took a toll on him physically for the remainder of his career. So you're going to see 2-3 running backs getting opportunities throughout the season. And so I think it's going to be Sawchuk. I think we're going to see a lot of Barnes. And then I think depending on how these first 3 non-conference games go, Kalib Hicks, Taylor Tatum, or a mix between the 2 of those guys throughout the season. I don't think they're going to concern themselves with preserving a red shirt for Taylor Tatum. If he can help them win football games, he's going to be out there on the field helping them win football games. They're not going to worry about that. Now, a guy like Xavier Robinson, he might redshirt just because of the depth that you have at running back. You don't have to burn all of the red shirts, and he kind of does a little bit of what Jovantae Barnes does from a physical standpoint. Another interesting quote, this one from Jovantae Barnes about Seth Littrell and his offense. He says, he loves to run the ball. And he mentioned that since day one. As soon as he got the OC job, he's going to run the ball. And ever since fall camp and spring ball started, it's been no doubt that we've been running the ball. And before you jump off and be like, okay, we're going back to the Barry Switzer wishbone days. No, we're not doing that. Jackson Arnold's too good. The wide receiver room is too stinking good to not throw the ball a bunch as well. But I think what this says is you're going to have an opportunity to see a pretty even split, and they're going to look for significant balance in their rushing and passing attack.
I wouldn't mind a flex bone or a wishbone coming back, right? It'd be fun, right? It's funny because I was listening to...
with Michael Hawkins, you could do it.
I mean, hey, you can do it with Jackson Arnold. Like, don't get it twisted. Dude can move, right? He can run an option on that triple option and get you, right? And no, I was listening to Dominique Foxworth from ESPN, and he was talking about playing against his son on College Football 25, right? You know, as you get older and you play your kids, they start to cook you a little bit because you're way more rusty than they are. So he decided to go pick Navy to go up against his son who's playing with Maryland, and he's just triple optioned him to death because video games can't figure it out, just like most schools can't actually figure it out whenever you got dudes that are actually of size and strength. I mean, we know the service academies have to have smaller guys just because of requirements for, you know, being in the military, but we get dudes that actually have that size. Hey, man. There's a good chance you can start disrupting things. But no, it's going to be awesome to see in that we're going to run the ball because there was a lot of situations last season that just about any Sooner fan will say they got tired of us not running the ball and burning some clock, right? Like in certain situations, just let the clock run. Don't even try to hurry it up. Run it down their throat, pound, and just let it ride. Because in those situations, you could close out games, Kansas. You could have ended up winning the game you're supposed to win on said road.
Yeah, I think having a little bit more complementary football, just a little bit more understanding of when it's time to take the foot off the gas at different points. You know, our defense was just on the field for 8-9 plays in 5-6 minutes. Okay, we're going to slow the thing down. We're going to take the tempo down a little bit just to give our defense a bit of a breather. But they've got the dudes to have a really, really good rushing team from the running back perspective. And I think the offensive line is going to come together. That's going to help them have that as well. So I think this is going to be a good running team. We'll see how good they're going to be in the 2024 season. The Oklahoma Sooners will face the Houston Cougars in non-conference play. We've had a little bit of a history with those Cougars and one Willie Fritz we'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Week 2 of the 2024 college football season, the Oklahoma Sooners will face the Houston Cougars. This was a game that kind of replaces your Georgia game that was going to be on the non-conference schedule and no longer. But I think it's an intriguing matchup against a Willie Fritz team that is going to be well coached and a program that you know will have good discipline about it. Let's not forget 2020. Was it 2020 when Tulane came to town? Or I guess it was 2019 when Tulane came. No, 2021. 2021.
Yeah, that's 21. That's 21.
Sorry.
Yeah.
2021.
21 and 22.
Tulane comes to town with Willie Fritz. The Oklahoma Sooners actually built a pretty big lead in that game, even after Spencer Rattler throws the interception on the opening drive of the game. But Sooners have to kind of hold on in that one as the Green Wave really gave them a scare to start the season. So we know Willie Fritz is going to be he's going to have his team prepared for an Oklahoma Sooners team that has an offensive line that's turning over and a quarterback that is getting his feet wet for the first time as a starter. So, Jay, as you look ahead at this game, what are you thinking? What do you think are going to be some of the big storylines that week?
I think the big thing is it'll be coming off of Jackson Arnold's first game, right? Playing against Temple. And so we'll have an idea of what he's going to be because, I mean, if you go look at the Arkansas State game last season, right, he got in there, he went 11 for 11, got to get some balls out there. But Dylan Gabriel looked really good in that game, in a game that he was supposed to look dominant in. And so if Jackson Arnold walks out there and is as dominant in that game as you would expect a guy to be in a game that you're supposed to be dominant in, the talk is going to be going to this one, but okay, when things possibly turn up, what is he going to look like? Because the good thing for Houston is they have a lot of veteran presence, right? We went through and looked. They've got a lot of transfers in the redshirt junior, redshirt senior, or super senior range. And so Willie's got a lot of experience he's going to be working with. The question is can he dumb down his system enough for them to be ready to play in this game, right? That's where the challenge is going to come in for them. And so I anticipate, one of the bigger storylines is who's going to do better, Donovan Smith or Jackson Arnold. We know who it is, but Donovan's got a chance to redeem himself again. We'll see kind of looks like, because hey, he ain't had the last good couple of seasons since he's been left Texas Tech. We'll see if he can redeem himself at this point, but I think Willie's going to be going, this is rebuild year for them. So for them, it's all about just competing. As long as they're competitive to themselves, they'll be prepared to go into next season, right?
And let's not forget, this is a Houston team now, not the same exact team, but this is a Houston team that nearly upset Texas last year. Like
it
that,
is.
They had Texas kind of right where they wanted them on the road. Yeah, they were
full Nelson and everything.
It was not going well. Oklahoma fans were waiting with bated breath as that game was finishing up and Texas was able to pull one out. But Donovan Smith, man, I still go back to Donovan Smith, and I've kind of been a fan of his for a long time. I know he's not the best quarterback. I know he's not the most accurate passer, but there's just something in his mental makeup that I think makes him an intriguing quarterback. And when he went to Houston, I thought, oh man, that's a big time pickup for them. It just didn't really materialize for them last year. But I think, another year to get comfortable with the Cougars, I think he can cause you to have some trouble because he's a dual threat quarterback. He's a big guy. He's physical. And so as we've seen at different times over the last few years, Oklahoma can have some trouble with athletic and mobile quarterbacks. I don't think they'll have a ton of trouble with Donovan Smith, but again, this kind of sets the stage a little bit, though, for playing a guy like Lenora Sellers, coming out of the Texas game when you face South Carolina at home. This will kind of give you your read on what you need to be better at against the read option, against some of the quarterback run design stuff. I think it is important on that front to see how this defense plays against a guy like Donovan Smith, because you'll play Lenora Sellers, you'll play Jalen Milroe later in the season. Jackson Dart's a pretty good athlete as well. So you're going to have some guys that are going to make you pay in the run game, quarterback run game, if you're not paying attention to them. Just a couple more notes here on Houston before we wrap up here on Locked On Sooners. Come in the SP Plus rankings over at ESPN, 79th overall in SP Plus ratings. That's after the transfer portal window. So all the talent, all of the things factored in, the analytical approach, not considered one of the better teams in the country. And then as far as returning production goes, also, again, not a lot of returning production for the Houston Cougars, coming in at number 72, 72nd on offense and 50th on defense. But again, a lot of this is going to be a very experienced team, as Jay mentioned. But I think this is going to be one of those games that Oklahoma, again, handles pretty easily.
Yeah, I agree with you there. The big thing that helps Oklahoma in this scenario is that as much as we think Houston's going to be super competitive in this, they've got a lot of things that they've got to figure out, right? Like I said, new coach, right? The thing that helps, even when your team is bad, if you've got continuity from your coach, players are still going to play hard enough, right? Yeah. In this situation, we ain't got that. And Willie does a really good job of getting his players to turn up and play hard. I mean, he's going to probably take this job. Yeah, right. He's going to take this job and he's going to lead this into another bigger program at some point. But it's going to take him a year or two to really establish it. Kind of like we were talking about, like LSU going against USC in, at the beginning of the season. Big thing for them is that whole new defensive staff. It's going to take them some time to figure out how they're going to use the dudes properly in actual game scenarios, right? Practice is cool, but until you get into an actual scenario, you're going to have a lot of questions. And that's what Houston's going to be dealing with just for this season. I think next season, though, Willie's going to have that team turned around, and they're going to be competitive in the Big 12. Right now, Phil still has them as dead last. I think that's kind of accurate for now. But next season could be painful for everybody in that conference.
Yeah, Willie Fritz is a pretty solid recruiter. He's going to get
Agreed.
some guys in there that are going to be able to play above their star ranking as well. One final note on the roster, former Oklahoma Sooner turned USC Trojan, Littrell McCutcheon is projected to start at cornerback for OU. So it wouldn't be too terribly surprising to see some guys want to go make some plays against that guy. Jalil Farouk, I think probably the only dude on offense still here from that time period when all the drama went down, and he's like, though. Anyway, so
yeah, I was wondering who had been left at that point. I couldn't even remember who was left on the team.
From 2021, the only guys that are really here are Farouk, Downs, Stutzman, Bowman. Offensively, you don't really have anybody else that were, but you're going to have guys that like Josh Bates, I bet remembers all the drama that surrounded that whole thing, because he was the one guy that was committed. It was the first commit in the 2024 cycle to Oklahoma that stayed committed. Sorry, 2023 cycle that stayed committed throughout that whole process, when guys like Malachi Nelson and Mekhi Lemon and all those started flipping and all that. Luke Haas and everybody just kind of turned on the Sooners. Josh Bates stayed. Yeah. So good chance that he remembers all of the social media drama that went on surrounding Littrell McCutcheon. But who knows if that'll be on anybody's mind when that game goes on. It'll be on Sooner fans' mind, at least. Looking forward to see Jaden Gibson go up against one Mr. McCutcheon. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Also, go check out the Locked On Sooners Insider program by texting SEC 2024 to 405-817-6711. That's SEC 2024 to 405-817-6711. You'll get 25% off your first month. That's where we're going to go in and we're going to break down some prospects. We're going to answer your questions, do Q&As for you, the Locked On Sooners Insider. Again, that's 405-817-6711. Follow Jay on Twitter at Unfair Sports, myself at John 9 Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all the social media platforms. Again, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. But until next time, we're going to start talking wide receivers. Who's going to be the breakout? How many 800-yard receivers will Oklahoma have in 2024? My guess is a lot. But we'll discuss that on our next episode of Locked On Sooners. So make sure you're tuned in with us every single day. But for Jay Smith, I'm John Williams. We'll catch you next time. Boomer
Sooner.